So a while back I did a video on using parafilm for grafting, and the purpose of that parafilm is to keep the moisture in, keep the scion and the buds from drying out depending on the kind of grafting you're doing. And I had a question that was posed to me on there: how well does that really work in the heat of the summer? And while I don't live in Texas, I don't have the kind of heat that some of you might be dealing with in different circumstances here in Indiana. We did our grafting this year on 5 different peach trees, and I did that on July 18th. And especially in the 2 or 3 weeks that followed that grafting, our temperatures were in the mid 80s very often, and even up into the mid 90s for a couple of those days. So today I want to show you kind of the results of that grafting, show you how these ones turned out, and kind of what I've learned about how well this does work in the heat of the summer. So here are the 5 trees that I grafted. The first one here, the second one here that I grafted near the top, this one here, another one that I bud grafted, and then the final one is down here. These were all red leaf Indian peaches grafted over to a curl-free peach from Miller's Nursery. So these are all the same as far as what kind of tree they were and what kind that I'm grafting them over to. So we won't have any varietal differences. But this one does not seem to have woken up yet. I don't know that it won't. At 6 weeks, it seems unlikely that it's going to if it hasn't already. But this one over here has already leafed out, seems to be doing quite well. Coming over to the next one here, this one I grafted up higher, decided to go into more similar sized branches. This one, as well as one I put on the top middle, neither of them have leafed out, but this one here has. So this one's doing very well. I will add to the description of the video if these do end up leafing out. I'm not going to rip this off quite yet, just because I'm not certain that they are dead, but I will regraft here in a couple of weeks if they have not yet, do some fall grafting that then these should wake up the next following spring. So spring is when I'll be able to tell you how those turned out. Going on to the next one here, I again cut back down to the V here, so on each of these 2 major trunk pieces I grafted, and this one has woken up, as has this, from every one of its tips. So all of these were protected by the parafilm. Moisture and humidity was retained, and they were all able to leaf out, which is really cool to see. So we'll have to choose from those how we're going to grow this out, but I'm going to let them kind of take and grow. I'm going to wait till spring to be cleaning up all of the extra leaves here from the rootstock, but for now I'm going to leave them as sun protection and to help pull in all the nutrients that this tree needs. So next we have these bud grafted ones, and these did not make it. I tried to use this electrical tape on the bottom to make sure it had enough force to push it in, but the parafilm, it seems, ended up breaking a little too early for these. And also bud grafting in the middle of the heat of summer can be harder when using the parafilm, I think, because if any of it does tear, then there's a higher chance of that small amount of moisture that the bud actually has, because it's such a small piece, of that drying out. So it's just, I think, a more vulnerable type of grafting for the heat of summer. So I think from this, I would say that doing small little bud grafts like this, you have a lot less forgiveness if you're doing this in the heat of summer. And I think it's somewhat more exposed, because while you can add some extra tightness or wrap the top and bottom of the bud, you can't cover the entire graft the same way that you're covering that whole union on a whip and tongue graft. So out of necessity of not damaging that bud, you're actually preventing yourself from being able to tighten the whole thing against there, other than with the parafilm that has that tendency to break down in the sunlight. So at least from this experience, I think we're getting a little bit more exposure here, because we didn't have any other leaves come out and kind of help add shade to this. But I don't know that I can definitively say from this that it's necessarily a bad idea to do the bud grafting in the hottest part of the summer. But it might need extra shade, or you might have to come and reapply the parafilm if you see that it's breaking. But in general, bud grafts can just be a whole lot more vulnerable. So while I have grafted just like this and had success before in some of my other videos you've seen, it is a lot more risky, I think, to do this in the heat of summer, just because even when I'm out doing the actual grafting, cutting the bud off and putting it on, there's more opportunity in those moments before it's on the new stalk for it to dry out. And then we have the final one here, and both of these were very successful. They've pushed out leaves on both of the ones. I cut it down to just a single piece of trunk here, but I grafted both sides. And you can see it's very confused because it's actually the last day of August today, and we have flowers. Whenever that happens, you don't really need to worry about it. The tree's going to figure out that it doesn't want to support fruit, even if this gets pollinated. Worst case scenario, you could pull those off later if the fruit starts to form. But generally, the confusion that these scions have will go away here in a short amount of time. So you can even see some bubbles of moisture. It's actually fairly cool this morning, so it's not going to be from heat that it's got any of that moisture from today, but it's definitely holding moisture in. I use strips of plastic bag followed by the electrical tape, as I've shown in other videos, and that really adds a lot of tightness and rigidity to the scion, keeps it held in place while it heals in, and seems to have done a really good job. I might try and do more of the bud grafting in future years to see how well that works on some of those hottest days. But can this work in the heat of summer? I think definitively we can say yes. Grafting with Parafilm will work in the summer on those hot days. If you guys have had experience using it in hotter weather where you live and you want to share that experience, or if you've had a lot of failures with it and think using maybe wax or some of those other solutions is better, be sure and share that. I've really only done a lot of grafting with Parafilm. I haven't dug into the beeswax and some of the other grafting waxes and seals, so I'd be curious to see your thoughts on that and what I might try next, see if we can get more success. But hopefully this was helpful and showed you that this absolutely can work on those hot days of summer. If you didn't get a chance to check out that video I did on Parafilm, be sure and check out that here, or just check out my whole peach grafting playlist here next. Thanks for watching.